Welcome everybody to another session of Conversations of Change. Today I have Jeremy and Daniel from QHealth, Merri Health. But before we dive into a conversation with Jeremy and Daniel, I would like to just acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. And just to introduce, the purpose of this session is to provide an opportunity for people across the AOD sector and beyond to share experiences of this time, of the responses to COVID-19 and what they see as, I guess, a hopeful way forward. So I'll throw it over to you, Jeremy and Daniel, to introduce yourselves, because I think you probably know more about you than I do.
Jeremy, do you want to go first?
Sure. Thanks, Naomi, for this opportunity to share with you and just to share with people that are listening. So my name is Jeremy. I work for QHealth. I've worked for that program for nearly 3 years. I'm a counsellor, caseworker, and career identified person, and a person with lived experience of drugs and alcohol. And yeah, really passionate about this work. It's sometimes quite confusing. And then there are kind of bright moments in which, like, I can actually see, this is useful, this is meaningful, this is profound. So I sort of kind of go hit, hills and valleys with the work. But my overall sense is like, yeah, this is so important to the people we work for them to be seen and understood and heard. Yeah, that's me.
Beautiful, thank you.
And hi everyone, my name is Daniel, and I've been with Merri Health for over 3 years since the program first started. So I'm a counsellor, drug and alcohol counsellor, generalist counsellor and social worker. So I've been with the LGBTI community and supporting them for a number of years. Plus I've been working overseas in so many different areas as well. I'm extremely passionate working and supporting the LGBTI community, and also whether it's known vices, for example, with substance use, because it used to go hand in hand. And there are many gaps in LGBTI community receiving support in many mainstream organisations because they just don't know how to cope with the different issues that a lot of LGBTI present with. Like Jeremy, I'm also LGBTI identified and have lived experience with substance use, being LGBT identified, and working within the community. So again, thanks for that. So thanks, Naomi, for allowing us to share.
Thank you both for agreeing to share. I think it's super important to have as many voices as possible and as many perspectives as possible. So thank you both for coming along. Yeah. So the first question is, as it always is, but I'll repeat it. So what are you currently doing for yourself, for your staff, the people that you serve and your organisation generally, to manage the current situation in a way that is safe and humane and really allows for dignity for everyone involved, given, a lot of the difficulties and the challenges, but how do you maintain that sense of dignity and safety for people?
I think if I can share this in the beginning, that I think we've been lucky in QHealth that we had the flexibility of doing a lot of outreach, working in different areas. So, for example, we work from Werribee all the way to Preston in Darebin, from Glenroy all the way to Collingwood and Fitzroy. So we have a vast area to work with. So we have the ability to do a lot of outreach, and with coming with that, we have the ability to do a fair bit of work at home. So we had a little bit of experience with being flexible and working with our client needs and mixing that with our own needs, and i.e. at this present time, working from home. So I think for me, having that experience, I'm a lot more set up than what some of the other staff in our organisation, in the way of having remote access to our systems at work, and having a laptop that I can just carry around with me and things like that. And also doing outreach and seeing the people we support. So that's a bit about what I do in that way.
Yeah. And for me, what I noticed, so I'm at home, obviously. Well, not obviously, but I am at home. And
That's office if you're not at home.
I know, it's a great office. So just all the people I'm working with currently are doing phone counselling, so they're not doing video. And the flexibility is quite interesting. So some people are just wanting weekly contact, and I don't normally do weekly sessions. So what I think's happening is that they are wanting more regular check-ins, but I don't think they have the same depth of the experience. But it's shifting things where I think for AOD people, the consistency and the momentum is like a much more constant reminder in a weekly. So it's not like therapeutic work, but it's sort of like welfare checks or just checking in constantly with people about their substance use and the temptations. And it is about mental health. So it's still, but it's more not the regular sort of anxiety, depression, or the sort of PTSD stuff. It's more what's it like to be isolated, and how is that impacting on substance use. And some people that I'm working with have found it a much easier time, and some a much harder time in different ways.
Yeah.
I like your question, because also in the question was like, how are we looking after us? Which is pretty interesting. And I think there's been, initially I think there was quite a lot of check-in between myself, Daniel, and the other person in our team, Jacob. And we're just kind of like, not welfare checking each other, but we were...
Not that there'd be anything wrong with that, though.
No. Well, I get when we worked face-to-face, when we were in an office together, and the three of us sat together, we were constantly doing that. I mean, every day is a check-in. How are you going? How is the work? You know? So we've been still doing that. I think it's been less as we've kind of moved on, Daniel. It's like, we kind of know we're okay and we'll reach out if we need to, rather than just kind of habitual kind of check. And then personally for me is what I notice also in the people I work with, and for some practitioners, is if you take away the structure and the routine, that can be difficult. And so it did take me like a week or two to adjust to home work, working at home, of, okay, what structures do I need? You know, I still need to get up at the same time. I still need to dress in the same way. I still need to eat at the same times. It was almost like pretending that I was at work, but I was working at home, but so to make structures. And I found that also the people I'm working with, when all their jobs got taken away and the routine, a lot of them fell quite fast. And we're working on how do you make structure even when there's no structure? Because for some people, it's really important.
I think...
I agree. Yeah. No, go Daniel, sorry.
I think with that, so I'm used to working with and developing my own structure with so many different jobs and so many different areas I work with. In contrast to Jeremy, I do a lot of video conferencing with Starleaf, which is what we use at work, with Zoom, with FaceTime, with a lot of telephone counselling as well. So it's what is available for my clientele. Some of them are very vulnerable. Their clients have also NDIS, so they have literacy issues. So before we had the lockdown, I had to actually put it on their phones for them so we can access this information. So there was a lot of flexibility that we had in order to accessing them. And I think very similar to Jeremy, that some of our clients are traveling okay, but some of them are not coping at all with this social isolation. So, and I'm talking about very, very vulnerable people. So there's a huge contrast. And I think that's working with the clients. It's good and bad because they know how to contact me now to get my face. So sometimes I get messages after hours, which can be a bit difficult, which can be negotiated, but again, needs to be reinforced. But for our own self-care, I've got my own structure at my home. So that's my office, that's where it is. And I try to do a normal working day. However, within that, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of personal self-care. I like to go out and do some exercises, for my own health, to just get out of this environment, because you can be so locked into it and experience your own cabin fever, so to speak. So
you just reminded me that I haven't left the house today. Whoops. Damn, I'll do it now. I should check the mail.
It's true, isn't it? Like you can, you can just kind of fall into a bit of, not a rut necessarily, but there were days that I didn't leave the house, and normally that would never happen ever. I would always have left for some reason, but it was like, oh my God, I think I need to go out.
Yeah. And I think it can be simple things. Like I think practitioners can talk about self-care in a really flippant way, like, I'll have a bath or go for a walk. But actually now those things are really vital. And I was even saying to someone, like, just notice when you get out, or firstly have a shower. Like I think some people are missing small hygiene things at the moment, and not that hygiene's important, but again, like structure, routine. And I was saying, just when you're drying yourself, slow down, like pay attention, like just tiny mindfulness ways of going, I'm valuable, I matter, because we don't have the external reference points at the moment of who am I. And so we do need to care for ourselves. It is important.
Oh gosh, that's really beautiful. I feel like I'm echoing through your speaker, Daniel. I'm sorry, I keep hearing myself twice. Just that idea of remaining embodied as well.
Yeah.
Particularly at this time when we're looking at cameras, we're seeing heads where we're not engaging much in our bodies as much as we usually would. And that sense of, I guess, disembodiment can lead to greater disconnection as well. So it's like, how do we actually remain embodied? How do we how do we be mindful, not just in terms of the mental visual stuff, but how do we be mindful of what's going on in our bodies? How do we be mindful of, where we're feeling particular emotions or what our bodies need, or as you said, slowing down. The other question I was just going to ask is more specific to the population that you work with in terms of LGBTIQ identified. And I think, as you'd mentioned, Daniel or Jeremy, one of you did that idea of using substances was closely linked to that, and that idea of social connectedness is really closely linked to LGBTIQ identity. Do you find that the people that you're working with are more impacted now, or there are other ways that they're staying connected that is meeting that need of I guess identity as well as social connectedness?
I think some of my people, anecdotally, a bit of both. So some of them are totally ignoring the COVID restrictions to maintain their own self-care. So they're and substance use is included with that. So they're doing their own parties, quote unquote. I think you know what I mean by the parties, right?
He means drugs.
Drugs, drink, sex parties. So they're still doing those drug, sex parties, okay?
Yeah, I think you have to be explicit, Daniel. You have to say it.
All right. They're doing those the chemsex parties still. So they're completely ignoring it because it's for them, that's their priority, maintain their own mental health. Some of them in total isolation and not coping well. And two of them are just also readmitted themselves and trying to readmit themselves into detox because they're just not coping with their substance use. Some of them are going out in the streets, and some of this, the substances are just too expensive. And one's talking about doing some other illegal activities, break-ins and burglaries, just to get the money for it. But some people are telling me how they can budget because they're getting more money from this on New Start. They're getting more money, so they're getting more money to pay for their substances. So you can see where they're coming from, that it's good and bad where they are and what they're doing. And hence me just being with them and trying to keep consistent, because normally how I practice, I'll be with them and so I can help do that motivational interviewing with them and staying with them. But it's so difficult when you're doing it with a screen, because usually that's the face-to-face companionship. And if, for us, that being there with them, they can help let it off. And that physical energy does, for me, make a lot of difference in the way I work.
Co-regulation as well.
That's missing. So you're working. Absolutely. And look, you can, the police are targeting certain areas. We know that, but there are certain ways of getting off. And so they're telling me about what they're doing in order to avoid those restrictions. So that's the reality of how they're trying to maintain their self-care in the LGBTI world.
Thanks for sharing. thought it was, I guess, important to explore that, particularly given the context. Was there anything, Jeremy, that you wanted to add, or would you mirror some of those comments?
Similar, you know, it's interesting. So in Merri Health, we have a young queer youth group called YGLAM, and Merri, sorry, QHealth, kind of partnering with YGLAM. So I'm supporting some of these young queer folk who have mental health issues and some substance issues. And for some of them, they're like, this is great. Like, we were introverts. We invented social isolation before all you people. Like, this is even better. Like, we don't have to go to school or leave the house. But which is kind of like positive, but also like highlights a problematic thing of young queer people's, the stigma and discrimination against them that was there before, that's there now, that's just, I don't know, amplified or something. And so, but some people, yes, community, like queer community, was such a vital part to be amongst peers and the tribe, and to be accepted and you know, celebrated. And that all taken away was quite abrupt, you know, and that's been hard. There are, you know, like Thorn Harbour's doing online groups. I'm about to start an online group. I know the Laird down in Dirty. There's a group called Unicorns. Like there's kind of like mushrooms sprung up of like, there is a lot online happening now for queer community in Melbourne. And everyone keeps saying it's better than nothing, which I think is actually true. Like, to connect on a screen is better than nothing. And the substance thing, yeah, some people's use has gone up and some's gone down. It's not regular. Like, for some people, like, this is the detox. Like, cool, I'm at home and I'm going to go clean. And for some people, it's like, whoa, all my emotions and all the distress is coming at once. I need more substances to deal with this. And some people who are like locked down with domestic violence, abusive people with their parents who are unaccepting. So it's such a mixed bag of like, yeah, it's been in some ways good for some and in some ways very destructive.
And it has been interesting. You know, people are kind of searching for themes in understanding what's happening. And I think from my experience, it's very much that. It's very much that some people are going to be dealing with it well, some aren't. Some are seeing it as a positive, some, you know, some are struggling. And to my mind, it's really highlighted this. And I think services have responded in a really great way to this. But being able to meet the individual where they're at when they present.
Yeah.
And what they're, rather than just assuming you can sit this kind of particular modality or this particular technique or this particular structure over someone to say, yeah, we know this works, this is the evidence, this is how we go through this process. But in actual fact, what we're doing now is meeting the individual with what they need at that point in time and being able to address that, which I think, you know, is really positive. Obviously not people are not having such a great time of it, but what we're seeing is much more honest.
Yeah. I think more towards what you're saying too, Naomi, that it's a lot more honest and a lot more raw, because sometimes you do see a lot of the contrasts. What Jeremy says, some people are coping well, cruising through it, right? But some people are falling through the cracks. Because some of the clientele we work with, for our program, which is federally funded through the Northwest PHN, our services are free for the people we support. So there's no fee for service or anything like that. So our services are available for pretty much anyone and everyone, no matter of where they're coming from or anything like that, whether they've been international students or any other temporary visa. So with that, the more gaps have come across that highlight some of the issues, LGBTI issues related to being more vulnerable and more isolated, like people we got no money, being an international student, or if they're on a temporary visa. As what Jeremy stated, there's a lot more issues when it comes to violence, family violence, and even blackmail, and forcing people who are extremely vulnerable, like international students, into doing sex work and things like that. So it highlighted to us some of the gaps which much of the mainstream community just don't want to go there. They don't want to acknowledge this because it's too scary for them. So, but for us, I think, I'm sorry, Jeremy, if I'm speaking on your behalf, but I think for three of us practitioners, myself, Jeremy and Jager, we go in those gaps where a lot of the people don't want to go to, they don't want to talk about. So, and this is where a lot of our people do find themselves. So I think what you're saying, yeah, there's just so much there, and it's extremely raw because it's real to us.
Yeah, and I think that was one thing I was really keen to have QHealth representation in this series, is because of the nature of the work that you do and the really important way in which you're able to connect with people who are so vulnerable, in the sense, not in terms of their own vulnerabilities. I think the people that you work with must be extraordinarily resilient, but more in terms of their vulnerabilities to the systems that are there to provide support. Because you're right, they're just falling through the gaps. And I think a lot of mainstream agencies perhaps recognise this, but don't feel skilled or confident in working with those populations. So, yes, it leaves a lot of work for you at QHealth.
And we don't have, we get more referrals come in. A lot of people are self-referring. Even now, we've had just in the last week, we had, I think, 2, and another one's come back. So there's never enough people to help support them. So there's going to be a high demand, and I think it's going to get worse as this COVID-19 thing just keeps happening, because some people are not coping and they don't know how to cope. So just reaching out, I think, is what Jeremy is saying. Starting these groups with Thought Harbour Health, it's fantastic because it gives them some form of structure they can work with.
Amazing. Thank you both for sharing. Are you both okay if I move on to the next question?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can talk about this forever with both of you. I'm conscious of time as well. But so the next question was around how can people support you, and I guess more broadly QHealth. What are you potentially in need of? Is it advocacy? I think reduction of stigma is a key one. Awareness, resources, volunteering, donations. Is there anything at this point in time that if anyone felt the need to want to support or contribute in any way, what would you recommend? What would you suggest?
May I speak first, Jeremy, if that's all right?
We're going alphabetically, so you're D.
No. It's really important that I get some ice cream, like chocolate ice cream. Could you send that, like, in the mail or something?
We'll do what we can. Go,
Daniel.
It might be a little bit liquid by the time it gets to you, but anyway.
Okay, it's all right. Go, Daniel. Sorry, go.
It's right. I think because what we do, and the three of us practitioners, because Jeremy and I do seminars with this on intersectionality and people who identified as LGBTI queer within those intersectionalities. So what I would love is to have more awareness on a public scale with marketing or advertising to highlight the issues faced by LGBTI international students or people with temporary visas. And also same-sex family violence or queer-related family violence, because all the training is done in a gendered male to a female way. There's no public awareness of same-sex family violence. It's just a huge factor that services are not providing any training. Also, for me, as being someone from a CALD background, non-English speaking background, I come from a Chinese background. Where I am, there's a lot of racial abuse targeting the Chinese communities. So, and many LGBTI people who are of Asian descent, you don't have to be Chinese. Many people are experiencing this form of abuse. So during this COVID thing, there's a lot that there can be more awareness, public awareness, or even our Prime Minister, or even more awareness by our Dan Andrews, talking about these issues that are faced by not only the mainstream, but by people who are new to Australia or who more vulnerable, people on NDIS who are actually extremely vulnerable, not getting the services, the disability workers, trying to access them, trying to give them their daily supports, but they can't, and they are quite restricted because they just can't access them because of the COVID dangers and how to minimise the risk. essential services, things like that. So it's not only the healthcare workers, there's just so much out there to more awareness for LGBTI people within all those intersectional minority groups. So that's my spiel, but that's
How, Daniel?
they need to be a lot more. So.
I was talking about ice cream and you're talking about intersectionality.
So I'm an activist from way back.
Yeah. I'm an ice cream activist.
You're a dairy activist, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a hedonist. The bit that I would add is we don't need resources. So we've just had another 2 years of funding federal money for the program, which is good. Probably what we need is spread the word. Like if you're watching this or if you hear about us, tell the people who need it, because I think because our funding has been 6 months, we haven't done much program development. I'm hoping we can do that going forward and to really get the word out. It's really easy to find us. Although if you Google QHealth, you come up with Queensland Health. But if you Google Q, like the letter Q, can I do a Q? No.
Yeah, close.
Is that the sign for silent Alzheimer's? I can't remember. If you do a Q Health and you put Merri Health, which is MERRI, then you come to our page in the Merri Health website.
It does say it's youth, but it's not, because some of our clients range from 80 all the way to 15. So it's not only youth services, it's for all of LGBTI ages.
Yeah, and all the information's on that page. So people can self-refer. So our intake phone number and our email address, which is qhealth@merrihealth.org.au. But also practitioners can refer, and we do secondary consults. So if people want to contact us, that is kind of the message I would, that is the assistance that we would need so we can assist others, is to reach out, because I'm sure in this very large city of 4 million or so folk, of which, let's say 10% are queer identified, and a bunch of those people have substance problems or affected by substance problems. There's a lot of people who are going to need our support, and that's everyone from meth people, crystal meth, ice, people with problematic drinking, even cigarettes, whatever recreational substances. Like all these things are eligible for the program, which is, as Daniel said, I think it's free, unlimited sessions, and so contact us.
Open. Everyone and anyone for anything. It's fantastic. What I might do is put some of those details in the comments thingy on YouTube, so people can access it easily. And when you were talking before, when you were on your spiel there, Daniel, about
sorry,
I'm being cheeky for that, but I love it. Like I agree with everything that you said, and this idea of awareness, and what I was hearing as well as this idea of compassion. Yeah, this idea of being able to empathise with someone else's experience, even if it's not your own. And I think, irrespective of who you are, what program you're in, and what role you have, that is what we all need a little bit more of right now.
Yeah, and we just had Ida Hobbit Day, which is a day to...
Oh, yeah.
It was on Sunday. Yeah, last Sunday.
To acknowledge that there are people in our society, in this city, in this state, who have a really hard time because they have a love or an attraction to someone who has the same gender or no gender or whatever variety, and the stigma and the discrimination for trans folk, for bi folk, for queer folk is really high, and this can lead to substance issues. Sometimes it's kind of suggested that if these people were just accepted by the broader society, they're often okay with themselves. It's just the impinging from the outside that is the bit that hurts, the judgment and the criticism, the shame.
I might pop some links there around Ida Hobbit as well, because that's such a fantastic venture day.
Yeah.
Celebration. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Amazing, thank you. We have one final question, and this is my favourite by far. So I'm sure you both have one. I'm not going to ask what is your, but what is your positive reframe for how this, notwithstanding obviously the harm and distress that this current situation has caused, but what do you see as some of the opportunities for moving forward? In a, I guess, in the positive way and in the optimism, not just as individuals, but more so for the collective condition.
I don't have an answer, so you go, Daniel, and I'll think of something smart to say about ice cream. Go.
Okay, cool. I've got lots, so just let me know when you want to come in,
Sure,
Jeremy.
I'm like.
So there's a lot. I think for us, and for us practitioners, it showcases our flexibility to suit the client's needs, not the other way around. Because they don't fit in the box, we have to fit into their non-square or non-box type of shape. So we have to be flexible to suit them. So I think for us, it's knowing how we can be able to suit their needs. For example, with cognitive issues or physical issues or language issues or any of the intersectionality, we have to forego where we are and suit them and travel to them. So intellectually, physically, or whatever. So we have to suit their needs. I think a lot of people, and this is going to change for a lot of people, I think, in a lot of the industries, is learning how to work from home. So office spaces, I think the whole structure is going to change, and us adapting to that. Some people are not good at change. Some people are a lot better for better for it. So for us, it's learning how to adapt, and I think with that, to learn how to adapt to the client's needs. I think is what Jeremy also talked about in the very beginning, is learning to prioritize our own self-care. So we dedicate and sacrifice ourselves for the clients. We've got our industry, as I know you're aware, in the AOD sector, there's a lot of burnout. So for us to learn how we can look after our own self-care, food, exercise, time out, getting out of the house type of thing. I know both of you haven't done it yet. So that's highly important. So prioritizing our own self-care and changing our own priorities. As I said before, big thing is about how we can be more aware of the gaps in services to suit people who fall through the cracks. And the last thing is I've been asked to do some more training, some more online training to reach more people who are not able to get into Melbourne, for example, through Zoom and things like that is what we're doing. And I think that showcases a lot more flexibility to do more LGBTI awareness training or other types of training to suit people's needs rather than them suiting the RTO or the training organisational needs. So there's a lot. So the way that we can move on and move ahead and learn from what we've got and make it evolve. So keep it organic and to use what we've got. So that's how I feel. That's how we can make it move.
I love this idea of really centering on the human as opposed to the systems and the structures. And when you speak about burnout, I agree that there is definitely a responsibility on practitioners to maintain that their own wellness and to understand what their needs are and their boundaries are, really. But I also think there's an obligation and an accountability for the organisation to ensure that people aren't put in a position where they're overstretched and where they are actually needing to protect their own well-being because of the expectations put on them. So and I think it's I guess this time is exposing a lot of that, as you said, exposing a lot of gaps in the system for clients, but I think it's also exposing a lot of the gaps in the system in how it works for staff too. So here to moving forward with some different ways.
I would add one thing that, like I was saying before, I think for those who were isolated, using remote technologies is making a connection.
Mm-hmm.
And those people who agoraphobic folk, those who just social phobic, social anxiety, whatever, who couldn't leave the house or wouldn't, this is working, and it will work when we come back, when we come out of ISO. It will keep working to make this connection. I know that for probably more young queer folk, they're not so into kind of showing up to a service and sitting in a white room with 2 chairs and having a kind of more adulty-like formal experience. That the online or the phone counselling certainly works better, and it's more accessible.
Amazing. Any words that either of you would like to contribute?
Just thank you again. So I said it before, and just to reiterate, so thank you for allowing us to share the experiences of how we help support our people. And I mean that collectively. So in people in any of the lesbian, gay, trans, bi, intersex or queer communities, or upcoming communities or anything like that, just to know that we can share some of the experiences of and just speak on behalf through anecdotal evidence of how we support our people who would have difficulty receiving the support. So thank you for allowing us to share this, Naomi.
Oh my God, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you both for sharing so openly and so honestly about it. So I do think,
me. I also want to say thank you, Naomi and to VADA. Like I really have a high regard for what you do in that organisation and for that organisation. It always seems to be progressive. It's important. We can acknowledge people. You know, VADA is, I mean, you are, I think you're an activist in a way. You're constantly pushing and looking to see what's at the horizon. And I think VADA is with you in that. Like VADA, you know, is constantly saying, what's next? How can we do this? And it's flexible and dynamic. And I appreciate both you and the organisation.
Thank you. I'm blushing. No, thank you. Thank you. I do get a lot of support from the organisation, and I think I do tend to just push a bit of boundaries and push some thinking, and
Great.
People see outside of, you know, new perspectives and see what's possible, really. Yeah, thank you. I don't know what to say to that. It's not a common experience.
Great.
But no, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you both so much. And I'll put some details for some of that information you were talking about and your contact details at QHealth, and people can get in touch if they choose to.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ciao.